labor intensive on our part as we go through with the department here. We want to talk about the proposed rules too, really get your input on, are we heading in the right direction, looking at more of a risk-based scenario, and the fees are going to change a little bit, but it will be based on risk. And we'll talk, I don't see it on our agenda, but we should talk a few minutes about above ground storage tank rules, just kind of give you an idea where we're heading with that. So with that, welcome. I ask you that you have your microphone on mute unless you speak, and when you speak, introduce yourself, because sometimes not everybody has a video, and so we know who's speaking. And if anything other than that, any questions before we take roll call? If not, Duane, you want to do roll call of the board members?
Sure. Matt Goranson.
Present.
Paul Much.
Here.
Toni Bernhardt.
Present.
Carrie Cutting.
Present.
And Jim Fee is actually having, I think, open heart surgery, so he's not able to attend. He had sent me notification. And just so everybody knows, he is not running for another term either. His term expires June 30th of 2020. So the governor will need to appoint another insurance industry person. Jim said the reason for his not continuing is he said he sold his agency and is no longer in the business and didn't know what contribution he might have in the future. So that's just a FYI. Okay, and then we have several guests available. I'm Duane Sandvik, and Dave has already been on. Gary Haberstroh is going to be presenting our new online option for registering our tanks and paying our fees. And we have Beth Jacobson here from the Office of the Director, and we have Ruben Panchel, who is with the Underground Storage Tank Program at the Department of Environmental Quality, and he has a presentation as well. And we have other people from the agency. I see Chuck is here. He's our Director of Waste Management. And Dennis Fulis is here. And we have some other phone numbers that I know Carl Ness is in the audience. And we've got a couple of tank owners, I believe, that are also attending the meeting by telephone.
Duane, there's not that many. If they can introduce themselves.
Some don't have microphones, so if you don't have a microphone, you can just send me a chat and identify yourself. There's well, if you don't have a phone, you probably can't.
Well, not a big deal, but just a courtesy. If they'd like to identify themselves, that'd be fine.
I know April from Dumoulin's is probably on the line, and Eric with the Cenex stores out of Bismarck Mandan is on the line. Anybody else that I'm missing besides Carl?
Mike Rude with the Petroleum Marketers Association.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
Oh, that's fine.
Didn't mean to rudely not introduce you.
Oh, that's
Thanks
fine.
so much.
You bet.
I couldn't miss you because you got your big mug just sitting right there on the screen.
Yeah, he's definitely got a nice office there.
All right, with that, next agenda item is going over the minutes from the last meeting, an overview of that.
Okay, I'm going to pull them up here. Okay, we met October 28th of 2019 at 6 o'clock. We all met together at the Delta Hotels by Marriott, and you can see who the attendees were at that meeting. Dave gave an overview, and talked about several things. He introduced me as the new program manager, and we talked about the online registration and payment. We discussed a risk-based registration schedule for storage tanks. We presented examples on the surrounding states funding tank funds, and we discussed paying for inspection fees, and you can see D through I there. Any questions there? Then Ruben gave us a presentation. We reviewed the PSP LLC claim, where the registration payment, we actually received it on the 26th. It was written on the 24th, but we didn't get it till the 26th. And the tanks were removed the 24th of July. And then we discussed, there was more discussion regarding the risk-based registration tank fees, and the meeting was adjourned at 7:56. And there is a transcript of that meeting that is available, and I think the meeting in its entirety is printed or is available. The audio is available on the PTRCF website too. So we spent about an hour and 56 minutes in that meeting.
Matt did raise his hand.
Somebody raise their hand?
Matt did.
I can't see it. Go ahead, Matt.
What's the status of that PSP?
Well, at the present time, they're in the process of doing remediation, but we have not paid anything on the remediation at this point. It's under consideration, but we haven't paid anything.
So, to expound on that, Duane, was there determination made whether they're eligible?
I think it's still pending. Dave, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, we're taking a look at that, and one of the things, did the release occur while they were covered? And that's one of the things we're evaluating. I know some insurance companies have given cover, even though they have not been currently part of the fund or their insurance policy. If the event happened while they were covered, some insurance companies have paid out. And so we're taking a look at that as, did the event occur while they were under coverage? And obviously there has to be the timing is so tight. So we're taking a look at that and see if they could be eligible for either all the funding or a portion or none at all, and we're still evaluating that. And to be honest and open about it, we're leaning towards some participation, if not all participation, with that particular site. Any comments on that?
Will you end up, Dave, having, this is Matt again, will you have a legal opinion to do that, or?
Yeah, and we are talking to the attorney that represents the fund, and we'll share that with the board.
This is Matt. Did make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Do I get a second?
Toni Bernhardt seconded.
Instead of going everybody aye, I will just go, does anybody object? Hearing no objections, the minutes are approved. Go on to the next agenda item. Duane, if you want to tee that up.
Okay, the Petroleum Release Compensation Fund Balance Report. I know Toni had asked me about this, I think yesterday, and I sent out that report. Was it last night or this morning? One of the two, because we had got it calculated. So the fund balance right now with all of our obligations is just a little short of, about $5,000 short of $5.5 million.
Duane, does that include all outstanding?
Yes.
Okay, so any potential obligations?
Yeah, it's estimated as of June 30th, 2020. So, we made an estimate about what's going to preside between now and then. We have, Beth, that doesn't include the claim from Simonson's, does it, or does it?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yep.
So it does include the $150,000 claim from Simonson's.
It's actually
Okay.
prepared off the April balance from real statements, and then I made
Okay.
adjustments based on there's a claim that we're going to pay the next day or two here, and with that claim, we have to transfer out of the real fund balance. So that is all reflected on here. I made those adjustments, and really, there's only, because I had the data through June 17th, so there's really only a week of outstanding transactions that could hit the fund. So I kind of know where we're at, so it should be a fairly close number.
So basically what that means is that the fees for next year will stay at $100 per tank.
Any
That
comment?
falls on,
Go ahead. Sorry, Duane.
that's okay.
Any comments from the board members?
Dave and Duane, Toni Bernhardt here. So when you say the fees will stay the same, that tells me that we're not really close to initiating the new rules and guidance and the fees that may incur yet, correct?
Tony, that's correct. We did have some rules drafted up that really, there was a lot of comments about the risk-based and all that, so we have gone with another iteration that we'll talk about today. But before we went out for public comment on those, we wanted to get the board's input on that. And so we're looking at, and we'll talk about a little bit later, going through another iteration of the rules to get public comment. So at this time, it's not risk-based, but we will be using the online payment process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Do we need to approve this, or is it just FYI?
Yeah, I think it's just for your information only.
Yep.
One thing to keep in mind that it's important, the goal of the program is to have that new fee structure in place for the registration year of 2022, right? 2022, because that would be July 1st of 2021. So, because what we look at is that state statute requires or states that the fund balance should never be less than $6 million in that account. So we're below that. So, but the fund balance also says in the new rules, or the new statute that the legislation passed in 2019, that if that balance is $5.5 million or more, the tank fees slip to $50 a tank. So at least the saving grace is we get to charge $100 per tank this next go round again. That'll produce us somewhere around $620,000 worth of revenue. And we'll get to that in the next screen. Are we ready to move on?
Go ahead and move on, Duane.
Okay, so this is the Release Compensation Fund report as of June 17th of 2020. So we show that we have 25 claims, of which 16 are underground and 9 are above ground. And the reserved amount that we have currently for those claims are $834,857.30. We have old bill claims of 168, and number of new bill claims are 602, so the total number of claims to date are 770. And then it tells out that $16,927,1503 is what we've paid out in claims, I think, over the history of the fund, I believe. And active sites to date are 713. active paid sites are 1,699, and some of those go back a few years, and we're gonna go through that report. So in the system, we have 2,026 underground storage tanks and 3,902 above-ground storage tanks. So we got a little revenue in this month. We actually got a nice check from Cruise LLC that we just billed out for $1,800. That's not in this report. And our total receipts for the year were $611,175. So under sites owing fees, that first column includes 2020 fees that are either registration or late fees. The late fees only total $700. So the $4,300 that we have, those are all fees where people have registered tanks in the last, they have, generally we give them 60 days from the time we invoice them to pay. So we have some other revenue coming in for new tank registrations, whether they be new tanks or additional tanks. And then we've reduced the registration and late fees prior to 2019, before we took over, to $675. So I want to show the board exactly what that means. So this is a report that we have in June. And I have the report this is a report in October that we presented. So if you take a look at the registration and late fees from 2019 were $51.50. So we collected all but $700 of those late fees and registration fees. And, we had an outstanding balance of $16,000 at that time, and now we've reduced that to $4,300. So, we spent quite a bit of time in December and January trying to collect all that money. And I've got a report, basically here's the registration and late fees and the explanation of each. So the Walhalla location, they've paid their fees in full in 2019 and 2020. The late fees go back to 2017, and we've been unable to collect that from him. Dakota C-Store, that shows up a whole bunch, they have over $600 of outstanding fees, and they're basically out of business, and EPA is, kind of in the enforcement phase in that particular case, because it's an underground storage tank on Indian country that they have jurisdiction over. And the last time I talked to the enforcement division at EPA, the guy that owned the store was incarcerated out, I guess I'll say. So whether the chances of collecting that are almost, there is no chance to collect it. There's nobody to collect from. Haggard Farms owes $150 in late fees. They've refused to pay the late fees. Talked to him, and he's very adamant. We'll go through the registration process for the coming year, but he'll have to pay those late fees if he wants to register for the next year. Same thing with Bames, all 4 locations. He's refused to pay the late fees.
Like Matt has a question.
Pardon me? Oh, Matt, I'm sorry. I can't see your hand, Matt.
Just to let you know, that Walhalla location,
Yeah.
that guy is dead.
Oh, he's dead. Oh,
And
yeah,
so-
it's probably his they did pay in 2020 though, but I suppose his estate paid, huh?
No, I don't think it was that long ago he died, but the estate should have published a notice to creditors, and if you ignore that, you lose your standing.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if I wasn't aware, I suppose.
You know,
that they
normally the attorney will go through all the outstanding bills with the estate and send a letter.
Yeah,
And if you didn't receive a letter, I don't know what the basis is, but I know he was a sole proprietor, and
Yeah.
no, he's dead.
okay. Yeah, and some of the last communications, I'm not even sure those tanks were in service. If they had anything in them. I think they're above ground storage tanks.
And this is
So-
Dave. This is Dave. I have a comment. A lot of time and effort was put into collecting what we did, and I think you can hopefully admit that there was a pretty good job on collecting what was out there. I don't know how much more time and effort should we dedicate that if going forward we set up a process that they cannot get any coverage going forward until they make payment on all their past late fees. Is that correct, Duane? That's how it's
Yep,
gonna.
that's the way and Gary will explain this, but the way the database is set up is if you don't pay fees, it doesn't let you, if you don't pay the past fees, I don't think it allows you to even print an invoice. Gary will cover that when he goes through his presentation, but yeah, we set some stuff in place.
So then
That's one of.
my question
ahead,
then, follow up on that, this is Dave. So my question then would be, if they do not have coverage, are they in violation of the underground storage tank rules?
Only if it's an underground storage tank facility, yeah, they would be.
Okay,
Most of these are above ground storage tanks.
gotcha.
Gaylord Services, the owner's in a nursing home.
Hey, Dave, on this Ruben.
Yeah,
To answer your question, that's something I will look into, but I don't think about any late fees. If they pay their fees, then they are financially responsible, but I don't know about the late fees. That's something I have to look into.
but if they are unable to get coverage under the state program, they would not have coverage.
Right.
And so that's the question. If they don't have coverage, it's not a dispute on late fees or anything, but if they just cannot get coverage under our rules, are they in violation of the underground storage tank regulations? That's the
Yep,
question.
definitely they are. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
thanks.
So just going through Edgerly Airport, that's another tank that they added that we'll be getting that fee from them. Same with Marathon Logistics. I talked with them on just actually yesterday. Talked to their Houston office. They're really glad to see that we're going to have online billing and payment because they'll pay by credit card then. And Cruise Energy just paid today, so that was a site where it's a new account that had tanks that had pre-existed, and we actually made them go through a phase 2 and did a site inspection and got their SPCC plan, and the program was pretty well satisfied with what they had, and the site was clean, and so we insured their tanks.
Any other comments from the board? Any of the directors?
This is Matt. I would just say, going forward, it should be clear in the rule if you haven't paid the fees and regular and late, you don't have coverage. It looks like this one owner is pretty belligerent. It says refused. Well, since when is it an option?
That's right.
He can refuse all he wants. He shouldn't have any coverage.
Yeah.
Right.
You can pay the fee until if you're in arrears, you're in arrears.
Well, and if he would file a claim, he certainly is in violation of the current rules, because it states that you have to have your fees paid in full, and so he would not be available for coverage. His claim wouldn't be covered.
Duane, Toni, Bernhard here. The same thing goes for Beams Oil. I mean, they're late fees, and I just got to wonder why they're late. I mean, was it a matter of when the changeover happen to where there was some that got missed in a billing or communication or something like that, or is it just purely on their end?
No, Al, no, it's purely, believe me, I've talked to this guy several times. Some of the late fees, it looks like they all go back to, he just didn't pay on time, and that's how he accumulated the late fees. And one, he only paid for 11 tanks instead of 14. So we were able to get a substantial amount of money from him, but couldn't, I mean, other than going to, we would have had to go and probably had to collect through the state's attorney's office. I would suppose we'd have to go through a Minot to do that. And there's a process to do that. But
It'll be
that's the
interesting
only-
when we go to the next funding structure of this whole tank fund. I gotta wonder if the late fees will get more, and that, you know, because those fees are going to be higher, and they're either gonna drop out or they're gonna end up paying it. I just gotta wonder.
Well, the late fees are set by the Century Code. So we don't have the availability through administrative rules to change those. They're set in the Century Code, 23.1-12. Yeah, late fees and penalties are all established in the Century Code. So there's no flexibility from the fund. You know, we can't say we're going to charge more for late fees or less for late fees or not charge late fees. I mean, it's set in the Century Code.
Duane, this is Mike Root. I'm just curious, who are you speaking to at that Bames Oil?
Todd Bain,
Todd. Okay.
he's the guy that's listed as our contact. I think he owns. Yeah, I know he owns a place. There's one big tank that he actually that he's emptied, and I don't know. He's maybe even cut it up for scrap now. He hasn't sent in a form that's saying that he had, but that was what the talk was, that he had. It was in the floodplain up in Minot, and so he was going to remove that tank.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't had any communication with Todd since probably mid-February, because, you know, at that time I was going through the rule writing process, and I had spent numerous hours, and, you know, when you take a look at what you can recover and what you spend in labor to try to collect that, you know, I mean, I've been in business for many, many years, and, you know, there comes a point where you're just beating your head against the wall. So, you know, for the most part, I think we've done a pretty good job of collecting. We just got a few bad players. We just have to make decisions. I mean, there's nothing we can do about Dakota's C-Store. They're just gone. And maybe even this Corral who died in Gaylord Services, but, you know, there's not a lot of money there, really. The majority of it is in Bames Oil. I mean, he's got the biggest outstanding balance. I think it's maybe about $1,800, Beth? Something like that?
You're looking at 1,450 if I have them all.
Yeah, about $1,400, a little short of $1,500.
Well, Duane, this is Dave. We'll see how it plays out with the next round of fee collections. That would be my recommendation.
Yep. It's going to, the way, when Gary gets into his presentation, it'll tell you when, you know, we have set things into that structure where you can't just pay a partial fee. You have to either pay the full balance or you're not registered.
Duane, Paul Much here. On that Haggart farm, Emerado, who was the person you were talking to there? Was it Jared? You remember?
Which one now?
That Haggart farm,
Yep,
Emerado?
I talked to Jared. Yep.
And he's refusing to pay the late fee?
He wouldn't pay the late fees. Said,
Okay, and then question, when
he
you
did pay his fees, just not the late fee.
Right, but when you got done with the conversation, does he, in his mind, does he think he has coverage then, or what was his mindset?
I sent out documentation that says that unless the fees are paid in full, you are jeopardizing your petroleum tank fund coverage.
Right, okay, thank
I've
you.
got it documented in his file. And we sent out certified letters and everything, and, you know, he came back with a check for his registration fee, but never for the late fee.
Duane, this is Matt. So when somebody does that, do they get a certificate?
Nope. So none of these people have certificates. No, we will not give them a certificate of registration because they haven't met the registration requirements.
Duane, could you put up the fund balance once again?
That one?
Yes,
Or
thank
this
you.
one? Oh, it's not going down. Is that what you want, this one?
No, the one that had 5.4 million in the fund.
Okay, I unfortunately knocked it down. Let me get it back, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep. I'm just wondering if
Well, I'm gonna unshare my screen for a second while I pull it back up.
the amount reserved for the claims is 834,857, but I don't think you had that total of that in that fund balance for a reserve. That's my question.
I actually can answer this question. This is Beth. I'll turn on my camera here. You know, the fund balance as of 6/15 from June 17th, you know, the fund balance is, the reserve is 834,857. We do actually have one that's going to come out of that reserve that's actually going to be a payment. So it's about $150,000. So I moved that out of the reserve and actually up to the payment portion of the report. So that's why there's a difference between those two numbers.
Okay, thank you. That explains that. That's great. Thanks.
There it is. I got it back up finally. Sorry, technical operator error.
Any other questions on the report out on the fund? Is this the format that you guys are comfortable with, or you'd like to see it in a different format? I guess we're still learning on this process as well.
I think at this point so far, that's what we're used to seeing, guys. So I think we're good.
All right.
Okay, well, I'm going to unshare my screen, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Gary Haberstroh, who has just knocked it out dead trying to get our registration, our online registration and stuff in place. And I can honestly say that without Beth and Gary participating in this, there's no way I have the technical expertise to pull off what Gary's going to show you today. And it's pretty phenomenal. It's going to take us to the next generation, and I think it'll save us time and money and labor and some headaches when it comes to collections. So Gary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Duane. Thanks, everybody, for attending the meeting here. I will try to go through the details of the application, the web application for electronic payment. What I'll try to do is walk through one screen at a time and then ask if there's questions. And if there are questions, you can put them in the chat box or raise your hand, or just call them out. I'm hopefully Duane will be able to kind of moderate that, because as I'm sharing my screen, I'm not able to see the hands being raised or the comments coming in. So, but I will try to stop at each screen and give you the opportunity to ask any questions. So this is the initial login screen. This is on a test site right now. This is not live yet, but this is the what the live site will look like. It uses what's called the North Dakota login. If anybody has a login for any other state agencies, Workforce Safety and Insurance, or Job Service, or DOT, that same login should work for this site as well. It's just a standard login. When you get into the site, what we've done is we've structured it such that the initial layer you get into is the owner information. So we have a fair number of facilities or sites that are owned by one individual or one company. And so the idea was that we would allow for an owner to be set up such that they could see all of the facilities that they have authority over. And so the first screen we have is the owners. It has information on the owner, name, there's a number assigned to the owner, contact person, address. Below that is the facilities that that owner has. It could be just one, but in other instances, like in this situation, there are multiple ones. And below that, there is the online transactions where you'll be able to see the history of any payments that have been made online. Okay. This box on the right side of the screen gives the options for what you can do as the owner. The initial option is to certify tanks for annual registration, pay annual registration fees, or update owner information. And that would typically be if we need to update a contact, email address, phone number, or maybe even a mailing address. When we get down into the facilities, there is the ability to go into each facility and look at that in detail. So I'll just stop right there on the owner screen and just ask if there's any questions so far.
So Gary, this is Ruben.
Mm-hmm.
Is it spelled out in the detail whether that site is above ground or an underground storage tank site?
Yes, it is. When we get into the facilities, we'll be able to see the specifics about each facility and the specific tanks at each facility.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to jump into just going into the details of the facilities just to give you a walkthrough of what is in that area. So the layout is very similar to the owner, but now we're at the facility level. So you can see the exact location of this facility. This is, again, the example one, Marathon Petroleum in Stanley. We have a contact person, phone number, email. At the facility level, you can see the tanks. In this instance, you can see they have 4 tanks, but 3 of them have been removed because there's a removal date on them. There's the past history of registrations. So if they have, this one's only has 1 registration because it's just becoming registered. If there's a past history over the previous years, you'd see each year's registration and whether it was paid or not. And then again, the online transactions associated with this facility. When you're at the facility level, there's a couple options that are provided here. You can register a new tank. You can fill out a tank sale or disposal form, or you can update the facility information. Again, that would be address, contact person, phone number, email, things like that. I will just do a quick and jump into the registration so you can see what that looks like. To register a new tank at an existing facility, the facility information is all there, and you can update it if needed. Then you have the ability to add a tank. And here is where you can identify whether it's a above ground or underground storage tank. Product type, whether it's gas, diesel, other, or in some instances if they're compartmented tanks, both. Size of the tanks. A new field that we've added that wasn't in there before is just the tank name. So this would typically be the name that the facility calls the tank. And they can type in anything, a number or a name, installation date, and then if there's additional comments indicating maybe it was a replacement of an old tank or anything that would be pertinent to that. They can insert that, and that would basically save the record. And then there is a request that we have a drawing of the tank as far as where it's located on the facility site. They have the ability to, if they have a map, scan that, upload it along with the electronic submission. If they do not have the ability to upload it, we do give them the option to mail that in. If they specify that it's being mailed in, we give the information related to the address that it needs to be mailed to and instructions for mailing. Additional comments can be provided on that. And then we always ask for the person who is doing the submission. And submit button will submit it to the department. And that will then be reviewed by Duane or the people from the PTRCF staff. It's not actually finalized until staff has a chance to review it. And then if they accept it, then it'll be added to the database and added to their tank inventory. Any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to show you the tank sale and disposal form just so you have an opportunity to see that. Very similar. Facility information. Here's a list of the tanks and the option to select the ones that you're planning to submit the sale or disposal form for. The radio buttons indicate whether this is a sale of a tank or tank removal or disposal. If it's a sale, we ask for information on where that is going to so we can keep track of if it's going to be going to a new site where it's going to be used. If it is a tank disposal or removal, we ask for information on when it was removed, the method of disposal, and then again it's submitted to the department for our review. And it needs to be reviewed by Duane or somebody in the PTRCF program before it is actually uploaded or updated in the database tracking system. Okay. Update facility information is very similar. Again, you can update any of the name or contact information, as well as update any of the tank information. And you can get into the specific information on the tanks, change those if there is something that needs to be updated. When it's done, sign it and update it. And again, it's submitted for review by the department before any changes are made in the system. Any questions on that facility information? Okay, I'm going to go back to the owner. One thing I will show you is one of the standard parts of an annual registration is the certification of the tanks. So we can verify that the tank information is accurate. For these facilities, this owner has these 5 facilities. I've already certified 3 of them. So I'm just going to walk through to show you how you certify the additional tanks. So for these 3 facilities, the tanks have already been certified. For the 4th one, you click to certify tanks. Pulls up a list of facility. It has a list of all the tanks at that site. Simply certify the tank. Put your name. Continue. And it gives you the option to either certify additional tanks at another facility, continue to online payment, where it will basically take you to a site where you can pay this total amount. There is the option to pay by mail, where you can print off an invoice and submit a check. We also have the option to pay later because, well, we understand that in some instances, the individuals who certified the tanks may be different than the individuals who actually cut the check and make payment. So this allows for one individual to come in and certify all the tanks for a given year's registration, and then they can notify the payment department that tanks are certified and payment can be made, and then payment department can come in and pay online after the tanks have been certified.
Hey, Gary, Toni Bernhardt here.
Yep.
So as far as Ruben is concerned and the folks on that end, you know, we have to do annual reporting for, you know, leak testing, things like that, and prove that it's all being done. That's nowhere on this this site then, is there? That's a separate site?
Correct. That's under the underground storage tank program. So yeah, that's a different site that tracks that.
Could there be a crossover, a tab or something that you could click on that in this site or in their site? Because I still am convinced that there's people that get confused between the two sites and how they're operated.
Yeah, I would think we could have that as a option on this site to be able to go to the underground storage tank site. One of the things that I know the board requested and was the ability to use the same login for both sites. And we don't have that right now. And the reason being is because the underground storage tank has a specific login that they set up within their system. And between now, or between when that was set up and right now, our State Information Technology Department has mandated that any new web applications we use has to go to the North Dakota login, where it's using that standard login.
Sure.
So what's my guess is what's going to happen is they're going to be pushing the UST program to actually move to that same login. So I think in some point in the future, we will probably synchronize those up again so the same login can be used for both, but it will likely have to be the underground storage tank updating their site to use the standard North Dakota login. When that's the case, we could make it fairly seamless, but at this point we can put a link to the underground storage tank program so that it would allow people to go right to that.
Yeah,
So,
I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Matt has a question, Gary.
yes.
So when you go to continue to pay online, what are the payment options?
The payment options are credit card or ACH payment.
And are we going to charge a convenience fee for a credit card?
The site we use, it's automatically charges a convenience fee at the site. And so we worked with the Bank of North Dakota when we set this up, and we're using it in some of the other program areas within the Department of Environmental Quality. So what happens was they will go make payment, and in this instance, a $300 payment. At the site, the credit card site will charge an additional convenience fee, and that will be billed separately. We will never see it, but we will receive the full $300 payment. So the convenience fee will be charged on top of the additional, on top of the fees that we have them pay for.
Is an ACH fee free?
The ACH payment is $1 per transaction, and the credit card fee is, I believe, 2%.
2.5%, Gary?
2.5%. Okay.
Okay. Just so we're not eating it, that's what I wanted to know.
Hey,
Right.
Gary, this is David, and that's made very clear when they're making payment that 2.5% or that dollar fee will be added on.
Yes, I'm just going to double check and click on this button. I think this takes us to a transaction page that shows that, but we did want to make sure that it spells it out very clearly that there is a convenience fee and what the fee is per type of transaction.
But this is Dave again, but they'd still have that option to mail in their amount.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. The last thing I'm going to show you is just the ability to pay. So kind of the scenario I talked about where if there's two different entities that need to complete the steps for the annual certification, one to certify the tanks and a separate one to make payment. Once the tanks are certified, another individual or the accounting department of larger agencies could go in and just make payment. And what it'll do is it will pull up the tanks that have been certified and just allow them to make payment based on tanks that are certified.
Gary, this is Dave again. So if they aren't certified or haven't at least been reviewed, are they able to go to the pay online? Or will that prohibit them from doing that?
No, they will not be able to go make payment until the tanks are certified.
So then we know the records are always up to date.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Gary,
And-
Toni here again. So if you pay by mail, pay later, however you pay, I would imagine that the tank registration is not complete yet and it'll say pending until you receive payment, correct?
That's correct. When we'll receive a notification at the department that they went through the steps to make payment, and then there can be a delay in the actual payment, but until we get the remittance file back, until we actually get notification from the credit card company that payment was received, then we will go through and process each record and indicate, yes, these payment has been accepted, and then go through the steps that would allow for the certification.
The reason I ask that is because will that generate, let's say somebody forgets and it's the last day you have to pay, does it generate a late fee and then you're out of legality, then you got late fees to pay? Can that be a problem?
I might have to defer that one to Beth, but typically we trigger when we generate the late fees, when we have the database assess those late fees. So I don't know, Beth, do you feel comfortable answering that question?
Yeah, we actually run the late fees, and so, if there is a day or two lag, we would, account for that before we actually run the late fees. We'd make sure all transactions that were paid during the regular payment time are applied before we generate any late fees.
Gary, this is Dave. Is it able to, or does it provide as we're getting, somebody said I'll pay later and we're getting close to the end, does it generate a notification through email or text saying, hey, you only have 3 days left before you're late, type of deal?
Yeah, at this point, we haven't implemented basically a tickler or a warning system to say you're late. We haven't looked at that yet, but that's certainly an option.
I guess this is Dave. Is that something the board would be interested in, or are we harassing people by doing that?
I think, Matt, go ahead.
I'd just say that's a good idea.
I would agree.
Paul,
Okay.
much speaking from someone who's paid late fees before. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Gary, you want to look into that? This is David.
You bet. Yep,
Thank you.
we can talk to our contractor about that one.
Thanks.
Gary, this is Duane. When if I were the person certifying the tanks, and I certified the tanks, and my counterpart in accounts payable is going to pay that, so that ends up being a pending. Basically, that ends up being a pending, site.
Hmm.
We would see that in the database though, correct?
Yes, we would. We would
Yeah,
be able
so-
to track and see where it's at within the process.
So administratively, if we watch, and then that's primarily what July is all about, is watching to see the fee payments come in. If the program really monitors that database and we monitor the pending, we have the ability to create pending reports. We would have the availability to know which of those sites have a pending payment where they've actually verified the tank information but haven't paid the bill.
Right.
So, it's very similar to what we do, only we do it mechanically now, but it would provide the administrative support to be able to identify those. And if we've got somebody that's, we got facilities that are bumping up against a deadline, certainly, even if we didn't notify them through an automated email, we could notify them by a phone call or something too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think that was, we hadn't programmed that into the original budget for this particular platform, had we?
I don't know that we did, but we also put in a little bit of extra to be able to accommodate some adjustments for additional functionality that we anticipated might come up, which this certainly could fit into that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry to interrupt. Does it look like Ruben has a question?
Yes. Duane, Gary, this is concerning about registration. Could we make a disclaimer where the registration is to let people know that this is a notification form in any point? Because some people might get confused when they say registered the tank here. They might think that that's a notification form for the registration. Could we put a disclaimer in there to let them know that this is not a notification for tank registration?
So basically differentiating between a UST tank registration and the PTRCF tank registration?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, that would make sense because we'd want to make sure people are clear on exactly which program they're registering. So we can touch base with you to make sure that we have the wording and have the things identified so that is best to your knowledge that they would be able to clearly differentiate.
Okay.
And Gary, this is Dave, and you could provide a link, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would think it should be fairly easy to add a link to be able to go to the UST program to be able to get to that web application.
Okay, thanks.
Thank Gary.
Yep.
We have one more question. I think Matt's got a question here.
So when is the plan to go to this online this year?
Yes, that would be our sincere hope.
So just kind of a suggestion or something to think about. Being a person, a tank owner, enters this online and then needs to wait for approval to pay.
Mm-hmm.
It would be helpful in the instructions or the introduction letter or whatever you're going to do to lay out the timeline for people, because a lot of us, let's say I as a tank owner plan to pay this by check, but I do it a day before it's due.
Mm-hmm.
There could be some confusion. They'd be like, well, I did it, but I didn't hear back from those guys, or I didn't understand the process or the time lag, being it's a little bit different than what, now we fill it out, we throw it all in the mail, we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
So just that there's something to make it clear to the tank owner, unless you're going to have a built-in grace period. But even then, you should explain what the grace period is. Like, tanks must be registered by this date if you're going to pay by check. Tanks, whatever. But
Okay.
You get my anyway.
I think so. And just to make sure I'm not causing confusion here, you do have the ability to certify and pay at the same time. So I mean, on the at the same sitting. So you can log into this site. You can take that step to certify the tanks, and when you're done certifying, you can pay right away. So I mean, if it's the same person that does both, that option is certainly available to you. But it also has the option if there is two different entities within the same company that handle the different steps, that it accommodates both situations.
Gary, this is Dave. I'm with Matt on that too. Anytime we roll out something new, the first go around is a learning experience for everybody. So the more information we can get out front in the mail and what have you, I think would be beneficial, at least for the first couple iterations of this.
Okay. Good instructions.
Gary, when you're done, I'll share the letter that and the documents that we're gonna mail out that explain the program.
Okay.
Ruben,
Is there
you have
any
a question? Your hand's up, Ruben. Do you still have a question? Can't hear Ruben.
Is there any other questions or comments from the board? Or for anybody else that's in the meeting for that matter, I guess.
Show us how to pay. This is Dave.
Hey, Duane,
Yeah.
I don't have any question, so sorry.
What's that?
I don't have any question.
Okay. All right.
The payment site, I'm not able to take you to because it's a live payment site. And so basically I can tell you that when you get there, I was just playing with this, and I think there's a hang up with the link that goes out to the payment site, but it's a live payment site, so it would actually take the credit card if I had that right now. But essentially what it'll do is it'll ask you for your credit card information. Well, first it'll ask you what method you want to pay with, ACH or credit card. Yeah, there's a error with this. We've been testing all the pieces leading up to it, and I haven't actually tested that pay online part yet. So I have to fix that error. But it'll ask you for either ACH or credit card, and then it'll ask you for the details related to each one. The one thing that it will ask to kind of verify is at the end, it'll ask you for your North Dakota login on the credit card site, because what's happening is it's actually leaving this department site and going to the JP Morgan Chase credit card site. So it's a totally separate site. The information is passed, but in order to verify that it wasn't hacked in between, it asks for a piece of information specific to our site to be able to verify that, yeah, something didn't happen in between the transaction. And so that's one piece of information it will ask, is what was your North Dakota login. And it's the same login you use to just log into this portal to be able to make the payment or to process this registration forms.
Gary, this is Dave. I would imagine it's like any other online payment process once you get to that point.
It is, yep.
But
It's
if you
pretty
want
standard.
I'm sure if you want to demonstrate and you want to use your credit card to pay for Matt or Tony's tanks, they wouldn't argue.
We'll take that into consideration.
Yeah, okay.
Looks like you have a question from Matt.
I was just going to offer, Gary, before I'd be willing to register our tanks early if you wanted me to do and actually do it, if you wanted someone to actually go through and do a set of tanks to see if there's anything that could be helpful to other tank owners when they're registering. So if you want to get any, gladly help you out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That was one of the things we were kind of thinking about, is once we do go live with it, we may want to contact a few people ahead of time and say, hey, would you be willing to try it out before we just put the notice out to the public that it's available for everyone, just to make sure that everything is running smoothly in a production environment. So thank you very much. Yeah, we would appreciate that.
Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we can accept any payment before July 1st, correct? Because of the way the fiscal year is set up.
You do have to wait till July 1st to collect the payment, but, you could be the very first one, Matt.
Yep. Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Or not, that's not a Monday. What day is that? Thursday?
Wednesday?
Wednesday. Let me just, Gary, are you done sharing your screen, or is there anything else that you want to share?
I am basically done unless there's additional questions.
Okay. We've got some pretty nice comments in the chat session from some of our board members liking the format. So Gary, well done. Beth, you've done an outstanding job helping from a accounting standpoint. Very good. I want to just share with you the memo that we're going to send out. And this will go out probably next Monday is what we're shooting for. But this goes out to all the petroleum tank owners. We have to mail it because we're operating still under the old rules, and the old rules say it has to be mail. Now, those facilities that do have an email address will also get it by email. But this is a memo just outlining, what we're doing. And here's the online registration renewal portal instructions. So they're pretty specific, and if there's any questions that people have, they can, there's phone numbers to call. There's a frequently asked question section. And then we show them how to go about and create their login. And there that is right there. So Gary set that login page up, and it's very, very nicely done. So hopefully there's enough, I think we've set up enough help things available that if someone calls in, we should be able to walk them through it. We're also in the process of developing a help screen as well that would be available on our website. So if there's questions and they want to go do a PDF instruction section, we would have that available too. But certainly my phone will ring off the hook, I'm sure, from January or July 1st to probably August 15th. But that's what we're here for. So anyway, you'll expect that in the mail and by email, those of you that are tank owners.
This is Dave. Any comments or questions?
So it pretty much outlines, what, if you take a look at this second paragraph here, there was questions about when do I pay? Well, you must register every year within 60 days after July 1st or incur a late fee of $25 per tank. And that comes right out of the Century Code. That's right out of 23.1-12. And it also spells out that their current registration expires June 30th. So it's pretty hard to get any other language other than what you can use right out of the Century Code to define, when they need to pay. Any comments about that, board members? Does that look like it meets the questions that you had earlier from Gary? I gotta see if there's somebody got a hand up. Nope. Okay.
So Duane,
When I share my screen, it's hard to see if there's a hand up or not.
Yeah, Duane, this is Dave. So you'll provide a copy of that to the board members and to Mike?
Yep, I'll email it out probably tonight.
Okay, thank you.
I'll send it by email. We had, you had diligently worked on it and helped me out with some of the wording and stuff, and we've got the final version ready. It's actually at central duplicating right now, ready to go, so. But based on testing and stuff, we don't want people try to get into the system before July 1st. So that's why we're sending it out June 29th, and they should get it July 1st. According to the people at Central Duplicating, they said it takes about 2 days from the time that they mail it before somebody gets it.
Yep, and Matt typed in, just asking you to send that slide by email.
Pardon me?
Matt put a comment in there just requesting that slide via email, so.
Yep, Matt, we'll get it out by email.
Any more comments, questions as it relates to the application or the notification?
Do you want me to keep that screen up for a while, or can I take it down, everybody?
I think we should move on
Okay.
we got some other stuff to do, but good job, everybody. Duane, Gary, Beth. I think this first year will be a good learning experience, but I think you guys have addressed a lot of the questions, so I appreciate it. Thanks. You want to go on to Ruben's report, and then we can do the draft rules, and then
Sure.
any other business after that. So I think it's Ruben.
Do you want to share your screen? It's silent, Ruben.
Yeah, I know. My screen has been frozen on me for past 2 days, so.
You want me
Sorry.
to? You want me to? I can share your document. I've got it here. So if you want me to share it, I can do that for you. Do you want me to share it?
Sure, you can do it, so.
Okay, there it is. So you just have to tell me when to scroll down and whatnot. So can everybody see Ruben's leaking AST, UST site cleanups?
Duane, let me do it here, so, because.
Okay, you're gonna do it? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll unshare my screen then.
It's easy
Okay.
for me to do it here rather than you doing it.
All right.
Can you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is just a report that I usually send out to you guys. It seems that Dave is struggling here. You can see it, Dave?
I can see it, it's just my glasses aren't as good as they used to be.
Okay. So this is a report that I usually share with you guys. It's just getting longer and longer. But number of those items, some of them are just in monitoring stages, whereby we are just monitoring groundwater. So the one that I need to talk to you initially are the new one. I have some newer one that are adding into the list, and Duane didn't bring that up before, but I should show you guys. That's the list for the newer one. Creative Energy, there was a piping failure, and that's in Belfield. They are doing investigation on that. Grafton, that was a tank removal, and there was contamination in groundwater. So we are asking for an assessment to be done at that location. Red Carpet in Jamestown, it was a tank removal too. And SURS, there was an above ground site in Fargo, Sour Oil, when they were abandoning their tank. There was a contamination found at the location, so now we are doing investigation at that location. Simonson is done, so we'll send out the closure letter on that. On page, if you have that document with you, you can go to page 10. Not page 10, let me see here. Yep, page 5. That site in West Fargo, the well are abandoned, but I just want to bring to your attention that there's a daycare close by. There was no any contamination in groundwater, but as a program, we are still concerned about the daycare. Should we keep that site ongoing to monitor the air, or should we close it down? That's something I will visit with Duane down the road. But the tanks are abandoned at that location because there was no anything on the groundwater. And they did air testing this year, and there was no reading. So I was just wondering, should we just close it down, or can we continue with that due to the daycare in the vicinity? Another site that I need to talk to you guys about, it will be number 490. And that site has been coming up every meeting that we have. We talk about it in May last year, and in October, we talk about it. That's Cooperstown, Town and Country. Finally, they removed the tank this year. And during our assessment, it turned out that that contamination wasn't due to the human failure, or it wasn't a human error, it's a mechanical error. Just to answer the question that has been coming up since May, whether there was a human error on that, or was it a mechanical? It seemed to be a mechanical. And that was evident because of product in aquifer when the tank were removed this past 2 months. So we are asking for full assessment on that location. We just sent out the letter as of Monday. So that's what I just want to bring to your attention. Otherwise, the rest are just a bunch of monitoring sites that we will keep an eye. Some of them will be closed down this year. Some of them might continue until next year. I believe Duane sent you guys the document yesterday. And if you have any question, you are highly welcome to ask.
Hey, Ruben, this is Paul Mush speaking.
Yep.
Looking at I'm just kind of looking at some of more of the newer ones. You know, you had that Legacy and Simonson and Red Carpet there in Jamestown and PetroServe, and then that creative one you mentioned. A lot of them, or most of all the ones I mentioned anyway, they haven't submitted any expenses for those yet, with the exception of Simonson for that $170,982.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of went on that site? Can you give a little bit more of a commentary on? I'm reading here, on the report, but can you kind of give a breakdown of the claims or what was involved with that 170 plus grand?
You mean the Simonson one?
Yes. Yeah, the
Okay.
Simonson claim.
So basically what happened with the Simonson, they were replacing their tank. So we went out there for tank removal and we encountered the contamination at the location. Therefore, we asked them to remove the tank and to over-excavate because they were going to replace those tanks with a new tank. Given the site being in downtown Minot, there was no another alternative location to put the tank in rather than the previous location. So I think a lot of that charges went to the excavation disposal. That's where that came about.
Okay, and there was what, kind of two sets of tanks that came out? Some came out in September, a couple came out then, and then a couple came out in December?
Yep, because the tanks are buried in different locations on the side of building to the north and to the south.
I see.
Yep.
And I'm just thinking back to past sites that, different meetings and stuff, about where the where the soil was sent to, or farmed to, or whatever. It said in this first site, in the October 3rd section there, it says the contaminated soil was sent to Sawyer. Was that the only place available to take the contamination, or was there any, I don't know, research or checking into to see if there was, any other place that it could have taken it besides Sawyer? I just know that Sawyer is very expensive from past sites that have had contaminated soil brought to it. It's just a very expensive site, and it probably helps to contribute to the high cost of the cleanup.
Yeah, usually what we do with the disposal of soil, we don't recommend where the soil should be taken to, but we give a suggestion. And the only two available suggestions that we have is either to the permitted landfill, and soil is one of them, given the vicinity in Minot area, or land farming. So if they didn't get a land farm, then they have to send it to Sawyer, which is permitted disposal site. But we always leave that to determination of insurance to determine, because they're the one that have a metric of how much should they charge. Ours is just to give a suggestion of where the disposal contaminated soil should be taken to.
And like on that particular site, like what is the going rate? I just remember years back, like what is the going rate for Sawyer landfill these days per yard?
I have no idea about.
About 50. It's about $52 a yard.
Is it? Okay.
55.93 actually. And there are a couple of sites out in western North Dakota that are a little cheaper, but by the time you add in transportation costs, it's not cheaper. This was a site. Yes, go ahead.
This is Dave. Would it be helpful, or do we do this already, that we just get a list of landfills that can take soil and what their tipping fees typically are, so they can make a more informed decision on finances when they pick a landfill?
Yeah, there's Waste Management has a site of approved landfills for petroleum contaminated soil. We have done some spot checking of what those fees run, and like I stated, I think the cheapest rate that we found so far is Chimney Butte, way out west of Belfield, northwest of Belfield. They're probably about between 48 and 50, somewhere in that range. Because Diana had checked.
Yep. And where I'm going with this is that, can we provide that list to the owner?
Yeah, if they give us the chance to do it.
Let's look at doing that and updating it periodically.
Yeah, we can do
Well,
it.
I guess just thinking on behalf of the fund, if they aren't gonna care how much money they spend if it's approved. And so if we can provide them with, especially at least around the Minot area there, maybe all over the state, but any place they could haul it that's acceptable, that we could, have it hauled to, except for a Sawyer at 55. If we could get that information to them and either highly encourage or tell them it needs to go to the cheaper place, that would certainly be great. I'm just remembering back from meetings in the past, it seemed like somewhere along the way, and maybe you other guys can chime in, but it seemed like it was maybe around $15 or something to kind of another spot that would be acceptable for accepting contamination other than Sawyer. I know Sawyer was real high. I didn't know exactly where it was currently, but.
Well, I think this is Matt. I think that the thing is, in the past, that we've had a number of claims, and it was determined by the previous administrator that, we pay in that $14 to $16 range. And if an owner doesn't want to make the effort to find somebody to land farm it that the health department will permit, or even acquire some land that's permittable, that's his business decision. But up to this point, have not had a blank check for people like Sawyer Landfill.
Yeah,
Let me just refer back, the previous administration really recommended land farming. Well, it's if you know anything about land farming, it's not a real easy process to go through, because you have to get a permit from the waste management,
Solid waste. Solid waste.
Yeah, Duane, they're going through a general permit process. I think this is Dave, where I think we should probably go as a fund is that based on the location, based on transportation costs and what we could see as the cheapest alternative to a landfill, we would say, based on this, the fund is willing to reimburse X amount of dollars. That's all you're going to get. So if you want to go pay more than that, you can, but we're only going to reimburse X amount of dollars based on transportation costs and what the tipping fees will be. And I think that may be a direction we want to go.
Well, I think you're exactly right, Dave. That's the direction and the thrust that we're in past meetings. Otherwise, there's no incentive for the tank owner. I mean, if they know they can just haul it wherever they want and get reimbursed, that's what makes these, makes these claims get as high as they are. So yeah, I think that would be great, or in the definite right direction.
Well, this is Matt. I mean, there are on the other side of that, if these landfills, I looked through our file and we had a big cleanup in Devil's Lake with thousands of yards, and granted, it was a few years ago, but number one, it wasn't at that time a big deal for the city of Devil's Lake to get approval from the health department to take the dirt. Number two, they were pleased as punch because as a regular landfill, they used it as overburden, which they would have had to purchase anyway. And number three, it only cost the fund $16 a yard. So if these landfills know that our fund pays whatever they charge, we've got things backwards. And technically when an owner, isn't there a requirement to get a number of bids?
Yep. It's in the guidelines. There's really nothing in the rules or nothing in the Century Code that state about bids being taken. It's in the guidelines. So we're going to talk about guidelines in the new rules too. That might.
And
yeah.
To add on top of that, Matt, I think the most challenging thing is during the removal. When we go to the site, we don't anticipate whether there will be a contamination at that location. And if we're going to ask for a bid, 3 bids, then every removal have to have 3 bids, of which is not in a Century Code or any guideline. So that's something that we should look into. And like I say, that's the most challenge, because when you go to the site, you don't anticipate that contamination to be found at that location.
Well, and this is Dave, and I think I know my car insurance, I don't have to go bids anymore. They look at it and say, this is what we feel that the damage is, and this is what we're going to pay.
Right.
And so I think we may want to look at a process like that.
Yeah.
And if they can get it done cheaper, more power to them, but we're not going to pay any more. Exactly.
So all what we need to do is to have that metric in place, and I agree with Dave on that. So, Toni, I saw that your hand was up here. Do you have any question?
Ruben, just my sentiments exactly what the other guys are saying. So that was my concern too, is an open checkbook per se. And I know that we had a pretty good control on that before, and I sense that that's going to happen again.
Okay, thanks.
And I guess
Carl answered.
Paul Much-here.
Carl
I'll just say one last thing. This is Paul Much-here again. And as far as the bid, bids, proper bids being taken, asked for, and so forth, I think it should be, more than just a guideline, be something that they're required to do, and to be able to show and prove that they actually, they actually did their due diligence in making sure that they're doing what they can to, even though maybe they don't care, but at least it helps the fund to make sure that we're keeping costs down and getting it done the most responsible way. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl Ness here. Just for a person that just went through trying to find, and currently still trying to find some place to dispose of contaminated material, most of the municipal landfills will only take contamination less than 100 parts per million and use it for cover. I called 9 places. Ended up calling 4 places in Minnesota. We found 2, but they can't take it until after July 1st because they're maxed out on their total amount they can take for the month. So, basically, yes, there should be a number set for what the fund's going to pay, but you got to realize this is becoming extremely difficult to find places to dispose of hydrocarbon contaminated soils.
Thanks, Carl.
When Ruben's done sharing his screen, I'll show you the sites that waste management has available for petroleum contaminated soils. We have it on our website, so I can share that screen. There's only like 8 of them.
For Ruben and maybe Carl, is it feasible that this kind of material is run through an asphalt plant to burn the hydrocarbons off?
Yeah, this is Dave. It could be, but then we get into some air issues as well. But they have used similar type kilns to reduce contamination of the soil.
Called around for that too. I called 12 places. None of them do it anymore because of air emissions. Yep,
and there's air emissions issues with that.
How does, just to educate me, Sawyer what, land farms it?
I couldn't answer that question. I don't know what they do with it.
I
think they treat it, actually. I think they might run it through their treater.
Yeah, I don't.
They bury it.
Yeah, I think that's more the case, is they just put it in their cells as it comes in.
Yeah.
So it evaporates and goes in the air.
It can. But yeah, it's just the way those regulations work. It seems kind of odd, but that's the way it is. I kind of where I'm hearing, this is Dave again, is that it would be helpful if we do a little homework on this and find out what landfills have capacity left, have periodically update those lists, and then really push the responsible parties to get 3 bids, and we'll do what we can to help them in that.
Ruben, can I get you to unshare your screen so I can share this? I want to share the site.
Sure, I just did.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is solid waste facilities for treatment, disposal of refined petroleum contaminated soils. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 facilities in the state of North Dakota that are authorized by Waste Management to do that. Now, Chuck, if you're on the line, correct me if I'm incorrect on that.
No, that's right, Duane. All those facilities do take that material. And to answer the question that came up earlier, typically some facilities do have provisions in their permits to allow for land farming on site. But typically what happens is they just put that material in the cells.
Yeah, and depending on the time of year they receive it. And then they also, some of them have limitation on how much they can take overall in a given year.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, for tipping fees, like we heard earlier, those are typically negotiable. So you're going to have varied amounts. They may have a published amount, but that can be different depending on what negotiation you have.
And the big thing for the fund is that the site that has a contamination communicate with the fund in a proper manner, so that we have some time to work with that. But generally what happens is you get to an underground storage tank site where they haven't done their homework and they haven't prepared for contaminated soil. And all of a sudden they dig it up, they've got contaminated soil. They're limited to how they can stockpile it. So the best thing for that company is they take it off-site and get rid of it. And then, of course, they're expecting us to pay the full burden. And that's kind of what happened in the Simonson's case.
Duane, this is
Because
Duane, this is Dave. I think where we need to go on this is that we're going to have to get more active as a fund and fund manager to help the claimants get the best price they can get. And that's in our vested interest as a fund to provide that service as much as we can.
I agree with that, Dave.
Dave, this is Mike Rood. One of the things that the insurance department used to do was send out I don't know how often he sent it out, but there was a flyer that detailed exactly what you should do if you did have a release of any kind. And maybe that's something we should look at sticking into this next mailer that you're sending out. I think I might be able to round up a copy of it, and I can certainly scan it and shoot it over to you guys. I mean, it's just a good reminder of, it's not that difficult to do if you follow the process. And
Well, I think
maybe maybe one more thing we could also do is maybe some of our marketers could reach out to some of the farmers in the different parts of the state and see if they're willing to land farm some of this stuff. I know we used to have one marketer who had a bunch of farmland out here by Steele, and whenever he had a claim or the state had a claim, if he was available, they'd take it out there and he'd land farm it for a pretty reasonable price. So that might be an option that we need to explore too, instead of just taking it to these landfills automatically. So
yeah. Thanks, Mike, for your comments. And this is Dave again, just to kind of add on to that. We did just come up with general permit guidelines on land farming because we're getting a lot of those requests up in the oil patch as well. And so maybe we could take advantage of both of that at the same time. So if you could get that copy of that information would be great.
And this is Ruben too, Mike, just to add on top of what Dave is saying, if you're going to talk to those farmers or marketers about land farming, then they should know that there's application that they have to go with it, because if they don't know about that, it might be frustrating down the road, and that might ruin the relationship. So just keep in mind that.
Well, absolutely, you guys. I mean, if you want to get us exactly the information that we need to share with our members, I mean, I'd certainly put it out there because there might be some farmers who'd be interested in doing it. So,
sure.
Okay.
Ruben, Chuck, isn't there some monitoring that has to go along with that? Because I've seen some bills come through and they have to monitor and create reports and things to that effect. So it doesn't end just with the dollar amount for the land farming. You have, you're probably going to accumulate $20,000 to $30,000 in just reports and monitoring.
So yeah, we as David mentioned earlier, we just finalized the rules for general permits, and so one of the first general permits that we're going to come out with is one that will cover land farming, kind of streamline the process. That will go out for public comment. We'll reach out to you folks, make sure that you have a copy of that language so you know exactly what it's going to look like, and solicit some comments on that as well.
Okay, we done with. Go ahead.
Paul,
Go ahead, Paul.
Paul Mutcher again. I was just going to say, anything that we can do on our end, so that when there is a tank work done and stuff, so that they know that it's kind of getting back to that blank check mentality, the things that they definitely have to do, they must do, in a responsible way, and that it's just not going to be a blank check type situation, because that's what kills the fun. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Matt's got his hand up. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I didn't mean to if I do.
Oh, okay. All right. I think Tony's got his hand up too.
Yeah, so just a comment here. Let's not forget the excavation owners, who do the excavating, because we inherited one site here a couple of years ago when there was a consolidation, and the excavation person that did the excavating, he volunteered to take the dirt, and of course we permitted that and things like that, and it was all legal. But let's not forget who the excavation folks are too, because a lot of times they'll take that dirt. In
the case of Simonson's, they didn't.
Yeah. And this is Dave. this is Dave. Yeah, we have to look at all the options. Obviously, putting my other hat on, we don't want the soil to go out on a piece of property to create more environmental issues. So we have to just be careful how we do that. Are we ready to move on to the next topic?
Yep, I'm
Sure.
done, unless if somebody have question, but I'm done.
All right.
Thank you.
Duane, if you want to go over the rules, where we're at.
Okay, gotta pull it up. Gotta find out where I got it again. Well, I had them. There we go. All right, everybody should be able to see them. I think, Matt, you had a question earlier today about getting, if we got an Attorney General's, basically opinion on the rules. And I wouldn't say we got an opinion, but we certainly got a lot of comments and a lot of good feedback from them and good suggestions on what they thought in the rules, what would be acceptable to the Legislative Rules Committee. And so anyway, Dave sat in on that conversation too. So did the document that I send you answer those questions you had, Matt?
Well, I looked at the notations. I guess I was wondering. I personally, and I think our board is still very concerned about above ground tanks feeding retail. And when I didn't see that in here, I wondered if that was something they objected to, or why that was. I guess that was the first tickler in my mind. Anyway.
Where was your concern was where at, Matt? In the fee structure?
Yeah, there's nothing about, I mean, we've had multiple $1 million claims of above ground tanks feeding retail, and I think we either need to address that in full, or we need to change the law so that it's not required to be insured by this fund, and we need to refuse to insure those sites. Just as we need to either change the rules or we need to change the law so that we have a site that's already tapped us for $1 million and on an underground system and continues to use a whole bunch of equipment of the same vintage, and we continue to insure them. I mean, we either need to be able to incentivize them to update, or we need to be able to tell them to find their insurance elsewhere.
Yeah, Matt, this is Dave. I think we tried to address some of that in the risk-based scenario. So they would actually, the older your system is, the potentially higher rate you would pay. And the other concern I have as DEQ is we are going with above ground storage tank rules and require them to meet certain specifications. That may take care of some of those issues that you're talking about, or concerns. I'm just concerned that if we have a series of installations out there with no coverage at all, we're going to have a lot of abandoned sites with contamination and nowhere to go for getting them cleaned up. Not saying that the fund has to pay for all that, but I'm just thinking big picture.
So I did some calculations on an above ground storage tank that has basically are tanks that are sitting out in the prairie with no containment or anything. And they're relatively old. They would be older than 30 years of age. It costs about $1,500 to insure that tank under the new scenario with all the multipliers, if they had an active claim. So I mean, that's I would think that would be a significant incentive to maybe upgrade your tanks or get rid of them.
And Duane, is it correct to say that if you've had a previous release and the fund is paid for it, your risk is increased, and then your fee goes up as well?
Yeah, look at table 5. I think I've got table 5 highlighted for you. So it tells you what the multipliers are if you have claims, if the site has a claim. Now, of course, that doesn't address the sites who have abandoned their tank, have taken their tanks off location, like SAR Oil, and there's a couple other ones that I think the PetroServe station up in Grafton, that they removed the tanks. It doesn't allow us then to go actually and charge those facilities a premium because they don't exist anymore. But if you have an existing system and you don't do anything, the claim multiplier for those systems, if you've been reimbursed over $150,001, is 2.5 on top of the tank. So that's where that tank fee would be right around that $1,500 to $1,700 maximum for a large above ground storage tank.
So just to make it clear to us on the call today, the way the proposed rules stand now, I mean, if we could really get into the weeds on this call, but is there yet another comment period? You'll be taking another set of comments?
Yes.
And the public hearing.
Yeah, Matt, the answer is yes to that, because it's changed dramatically to where I think we think it's only fair to go back out and get public comment. So my question is this acceptable to the board, or is this just not? It's not going to work.
Hey, Dave, Toni Bernhardt here. On table 5, if there's going to be more time to comment in the future, I'm happy for that, because I just don't necessarily agree with table 5, just for the fact that, we as marketers don't want to have leaks, and yet in table 5 we're penalized because we did have one. I guess my point in saying that is if there was a leak, we've done every effort that we're supposed to and need to clean that site up, to do and correct, whether it's equipment, whatever replacement, we're doing that. But yet we're going to be penalized for 10 years because we had a leak. I guess I don't know that that's fair.
Okay.
Just a comment.
Yep, a fair comment. So the question is what are we going to base our risk on? If you have had very old equipment and a release occurs and we clean it up, and you replace it with good equipment, or new equipment, should the rate go down? Is that kind of where you're looking at? But if you still use crappy equipment, you still should be paying a high rate.
Totally agree, but if we replace the equipment that leaked and we went all brand new, whatever we had to do to fix it as a marketer, of course we're going to do that. But I don't believe then we should be. Right. Does table 5 then go away, or are we paying in the rears then because we had a leak? That's my question. And it seems like in table 5 we are.
Yeah.
Tony, look at table 4B, where the incentive description. So if you have a category 1 tank, that multiplier becomes 0.35. So you multiply 0.35 times 2, you're because you've done what you said you did. You've done all of the leak protection work, and you've upgraded those tanks, so you get the largest discount because of what you have done.
But are we still being charged in table 5? Let's say number 4 is a 2.5 claim multiplier. Do we still receive that then too?
You would let's just say you got let's take a look at how the formula works. So the formula is based on all of the different tables. So it's a combination of things. So you have a double-walled contained site, the multiplier there is 3. If your tank is less than 5 and up to 20 years of age, the multiplier is 0.75. So there's a discount there. And depending upon the size of the tank, the larger, if it's a larger tank, it has a larger multiplier than 1, but if it's a smaller tank, it has a smaller multiplier than.
So this is Dave. So, Toni, if we just eliminated table 5 altogether, would the previous tables provide enough risk in there to incentivize people to upgrade their systems?
No.
I don't think so either, but I also don't think we should be penalized to put new equipment in place that when it leaked, we're paying for it in the rears at 2.5 as that multiplier. That makes no sense. You're penalizing us to do the correct thing. We have to do it anyway, I get it.
Yeah.
But why are we paying,
really,
you know?
I think, Toni, the intent there is correct. They're headed down the right path here. It just, there needs to be a little more detail. There's a big difference between a site that had a big claim that totally upgraded and a site that had a big claim and has done nothing.
Absolutely agree, Matt.
Okay, so there's no way we'll be on the phone till 2:00 tomorrow afternoon. If we all start doing comments, I mean, I got a gazillion comments to make, but I think we should do them in writing through the process again, and continue to work. I mean, in general, I'm of the opinion anyway, they're headed down the right direction. There's a couple mistakes in here. There's things that could be tweaked, but we're headed in the right direction. If we get lost in the weeds, we'll be on this phone call forever.
Yeah, and
totally agree.
And I love talking to you guys. It's a lot of fun. But I agree with you with that too. But it would be helpful if you don't have to do it in this meeting, but jot down how you would like to see it. If we're heading in the right path, how can we make this path better? And if you have some comments on that, so it makes the rules better before we go to public comment, I think that would be very helpful for us.
Well, there's nothing set in stone at these multipliers. I mean,
this is
multiplying numbers can be changed too.
Yeah, this is currently a draft proposal that we're sharing with the board. And if the board has some saying, I like this, I like that, I don't like this for these reasons, or could you change whatever, that would be helpful. And because we're struggling with this as well.
Dave, Toni, again, what would be helpful for me as a marketer is to, when you guys get this tweaked, if this is where you're at and then you want our comments, I get that, but can you send out the spreadsheet then so we can put our own multipliers to that so we can really digest to see what a tank will cost, just kind of get an idea.
Yes. And I think Duane has done some of that work, but
yes,
if we can set up a table to where if they change some of the multipliers, how would it look? At the end of the day, we're trying to raise the fund balance too. So we want to base it on risk. We want to increase the fund balance. And how do we do that that's equitable to everybody? And so I hear where. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to say that, just to be clear, so you would, we're in pre-public comment period. If we as a board would chime in at this point, you're welcoming that, as I understand it, correct?
That's correct. That we definitely would like to hear. That's why we're presenting it now, because we want your input on it. We still are going to go to public comment, but you definitely, your opinions are very much taken into consideration. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'd like to just, I can see a lot of work's been done here, and I personally appreciate it. And our comments, whether they're written or orally or public or whatever, they're meant to be constructive, not to be critical of the work that's done here. This is not a simple thing to address.
Well, and I appreciate that. We don't operate tanks, and so you guys, that's why you guys are here. You have that experience, and that input is valuable, extremely valuable to us. And so we look forward to it. We don't take it as criticism. We take it as a constructive comments to get us to the right place.
Dave, this is Duane. I just wanted to state that, you know, the program did run some numbers based on a spreadsheet of what these multipliers were, and this will generate about $1 million worth of revenue.
So, Duane, do you want to share that with the board members? It doesn't have to be done this second, but let's tell you what, because otherwise we'll be here again for another 3 hours.
I've got a spreadsheet that's you know, it's I would say it's within 5% of what we would raise for revenues based on the current tank data that we have and how we put the multipliers together. But I can work with Gary to tweak it a little bit once we get through the registration process. And we could get you know, a format. I think, Toni, I had sent you in the previous rules, hadn't I sent you out a blank spreadsheet where you could input your tanks in and kind of get an idea what
Yes, Duane, you did, but my point is, did those multipliers change, or is that still the same one we can play around with?
Yeah, we could allow that. I mean, we can certainly do that. It would take a little work as soon as we get through this registration process, because Gary is instrumental in getting all of this mathematical stuff together and all the spreadsheeting together. And then we can get it out, and we should be able to get that out before we put this out to public comment.
Yeah,
I
Duane,
think we're looking at implementing this, Dave, before July 1st of 2021. That's our goal.
Go ahead, Toni.
and this is great work. You guys are doing a great job. I really appreciate it. I'm in Matt's camp. I mean, this is not easy to do. You know, I just didn't want it to be the last of the last. So yeah, we'll figure this out as we go.
No, Toni,
Okay, very good.
and we appreciate any and all comments, and it's taken in the best spirit possible, because we want something the next time we go out for public comment that has a good chance of people saying, yeah, I'm not big on paying more, but I understand how this works. So please provide comment. And so what we'll do is get this back out to you with a spreadsheet that Duane will put together so you can play around with the numbers. And then we can always have another meeting, a real quick one, just to go over the rules, and that's it. Proposed rules. Does that work?
Absolutely.
Can I unshare
Yes.
my screen? Is it okay with everybody if I unshare my screen?
Yes.
I think you guys I sent out copies to all of you, so you should have that.
But and we again, we'll do this. It's the first blush, and let's get some comments, and so we'll get that out to you right away. What else do we have on the agenda, Duane?
I think we're pretty close to being done.
I'd like to bring up one more thing. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Well, this would be a really great time to do that.
Well, really, I was just going to let you know that I had a presentation to give to the Government Finance Committee yesterday, and they were asking about our plan moving forward. Are we generating a risk-based scenario plan? And I said, yeah, we are. They did ask why 50% of the total petroleum tank fund, or one position, was being funded by general fund and not 100% from the fund itself. We indicated that, initially we said 100%, but there was concern that that was taking too much of what was left in the fund. And so that it felt that we should go 50%. What I told, and that's what I told the committee, I also told them, is we have not hired that second position yet because we haven't developed above ground storage tank rules. We really don't know how that's going to happen. If we can, we will operate with just Duane, but we need to see what those rules are. So it's still sitting there. We haven't hired that position. And so we're just kind of leaving that open at this point in time. I am concerned. A couple of things, and then a couple of things we talked about. I am concerned that with above ground storage tank rules, I think that's a good thing because that'll get them into compliance, address some of the issues that Matt has, like, hey, you got a bunch of old stuff out there that's causing us a lot of liability. The rules there are going to be hopefully written such that it will reduce some of that liability over time. So that's where we're at on that. The second thing we talked about in the governor's strategy, it had to do with our petroleum testing program. And by all accounts, we test for octane. And we go out and take random samples from the various stations just to see where the product is. It misses the mark. We're not timely. We don't in the turnaround time on those analytical results. We don't collect enough of that. It isn't lost on us that there is that 1/40th a cent tax that it talked about inspection fees. So we're going to continue that discussion with the governor's office is how do we make this a better program? Or how do we use that 1/40th a cent percent tax to help out as far as an inspection fee? What does that mean? Does it mean petroleum quality testing? Does it mean going out to make sure doing inspections that aren't enforceable inspections, but identify potential problems and hopefully take care of them before they become big problems? How do we deal with that? So I just want to raise those as some questions that we're dealing with now at the department as we move forward, especially when they're looking at budget cuts. So I think the petroleum testing program needs to be done differently, and I just don't know what that is. So we're open for suggestions on that as well as we evaluate those programs. So just wanted to throw that out. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Dave, this is Matt, and I understand your budget constraints. Part of the responsibility given to the health department when it comes to inspection is product labeling, and I know we've discussed this before, but there are just so many egregious instances of deceptive labeling in the marketplace right now. I'm not going to name them on a public call, but we've got marketers in Fargo calling straight no lead, super unleaded. We have marketers who have no ethanol labels on their pumps, and they've been like this for years. And part of it is because previous employees in that department decided that some parts of the law were important, or maybe something that should be looked at, and others decided to be ignored, such as price signs. And I guess it's a topic that I hold near and dear, and I think it's vital to consumer protection, especially with new blends of gasoline coming into the marketplace. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of guys out there that need to be informed about the law and made to follow it.
Matt, this is Dave. I appreciate those comments. So it's for me, it is ensuring a level playing field, that you're all playing by the same rules and that you're held accountable for them. And so I will take that back, looking at the quality testing program, also the labeling requirements. What does the law say, and what can we do? Maybe it's that second job, that second position that we haven't hired yet. That may be where they can help beef that up. So just thinking out of the box. So I appreciate the comments. That's an area that needs to, if we're going to be in the game, let's do it right. And we're in the game and we're not doing it right now is what I'm telling you.
A question for Matt from Duane. So in the past, before the DEQ was involved with the petroleum tank program, who was in charge of that end of the, that's the tax that's paid per gallon, correct?
The 40 cents?
Yeah.
Well, it goes, as I understand it, goes in the general fund. Its original intent was to fund the state lab, which provided not only random testing for the protection of the consumer, but also the service of marketers being able to send in a sample for testing. And it's kind of morphed into that money just and I don't know if you guys if the right people are getting it or not. I mean,
Yeah.
as far as I don't know, were you referring also to the labeling part of it, Duane, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I'm not familiar with that at all, so.
The labeling part by statute has always been held with the health department.
Right.
Whether that is correct, whether it should have been in weights and measures, I don't know. Weights and measures is vastly understaffed and underfunded as they present it, and it appears so. They don't have a lot of staff, but that's the way the law is now, and it's a law that, unfortunately is not being followed very well, and a law that, I mean, frankly, in the past, I've called the Attorney General's office and talked to Trinbeth and asked them, what do you do when a bureaucrat decides that he's not going to enforce a law completely? And all Mr. could tell me was, he said, well, maybe you probably need to talk to your legislator, which I said, Tom, to pass what? A law that says that the previous law that's already on the books needs to be enforced? I mean, it's frustrating.
This is Dave, and I get that, and that's why we bring it up. It's frustrating for us as well, and so it's about establishing a level playing field, and we've looked into this a little bit. I think I would love to continue this conversation. How do we make it better?
Yeah, and these comments again aren't being critical to anyone on this phone call. I mean, the responsible parties are long gone, but the effects of the neglect are woefully evident.
And Matt, this is Dave. I don't take that as criticism. You're just calling it like it is, and I have no animosity to that. That it is what it is. We need to take a look at how we can do this better. I do think it's going to take a collective effort between the DEQ, this board, petroleum marketers, to get the word out, and then there has to be repercussions. That if you violate the law, there is some penalties that have to be assessed. And then they'll get the word. But yeah, my understanding that 1/40th generates about $300,000, give or take. We have not been able to track that. And my concern is if it isn't going to the lab, and to be honest, we bring it up and they said, okay, do away with the program and take away $300,000 that we never got. That's a problem. So I will commit to looking more into this and having a more kind of complete dialogue. Who has the responsibility to do what has been done in the past, what's being done now, and do we need a law change to maybe the existing law doesn't work right? Maybe it has to be changed to be more effective. And I would need your input to kind of get down that path. So I appreciate the conversation.
David, Matt, this is Duane. Do we have a century code number for that particular law?
Yeah, it's in there. I've seen it. So I don't know what it is. I got a lot of numbers in my head, but they're not all aligned.
Yeah, sure.
And I understand. And this obviously we're a little off topic because this has nothing to do with the tank fund, but it does have something to do with that department.
Yeah, retail and all that stuff. So we can bring this up later. That's all I had. Anybody have any other issues they'd like to talk about or bring up?
Dave, this is Duane. One thing we didn't really cover in the rules was the fact that we may include the tank guidelines and cleanup, or the tank removal and cleanup guidelines.
Yep.
And how that function would work if we wanted to change those, being the fact that they're in the century code, that we'd have to send the guidelines out to the public.
Yeah, typically I'm not a big fan of using guidelines as rules. In the past, they have not gone out for public comment, but because we are gonna put those guidelines in the rules, if any changes are made to them, they would have to go out to public comment. So they would have the effective rule. So it wouldn't be just Dave comes into the office and feels like, today I'm gonna make wholesale changes just because I feel like it. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, Dave, this is Duane again. The good part that I can see from that is that does talk about the 3-bid system.
Yep.
That we don't have anything in the rules, the current rules, or the Century Code that requires someone that has a petroleum spill to get 3 bids before they go ahead and do the cleanup.
So they'll start to document that.
Yeah, and what that does is then that gives us some teeth. It goes right back to the Simonson's thing. You know, we found out about that claim after they'd already disposed of the soil.
Okay.
We don't have anything to, say you can't do that.
Right. The board have any comments on that or anything else we've done today?
Well, that's exactly what we need to prevent in the future is just exactly what was said, that we can't. It has all the hoops need to be gone through before you submit the claim, not just telling us what's going to be paid, I guess. So.
Right.
I would
Anything?
just comment, Mr. Glatt, that if we continue going down this road with this type of discourse and discussions, that I know that we can make this better, because this is all I get the clear sense from you that there's one way to do stuff and that's the right way, and that's all we want too. So this is a good private government cooperation effort.
Well, I appreciate that. Sometimes I'm wondering if we're even hitting the mark, so I definitely really cherish and appreciate the comments you guys have, because it comes from real world experience. And that's where I think good regulation comes out. This fund really is there to help people. And we do want to help them, but we want to make sure that it doesn't get abused as we move forward. So I appreciate that. If at any time any one of you feel that we're not hitting the mark, man, speak up, because that's how things get better.
This
Do we
is
have any?
Duane, and I just want to thank all of the correspondence that you as board members and Mike have given me in the past. I mean, I've been to this thing now for about, I think, eight or 9 months. So I've learned a whole lot. I've had quite a bit of business background, so that is definitely an asset in this chair. But I really thank you guys for being open, honest, and available to my phone calls and things. And I just, I appreciate that feedback I get from you guys. Thanks again.
Yeah. Anything else for the good of the order? We got some stuff to get out to you.
Motion to adjourn.
I was going to just ask for that. You read my mind. Do I get a second?
Second.
And I'll go, do I hear any objections to that? Hearing no objections, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Take care and stay healthy.
You guys too. Thank you.
Stop the recording first.
2 hours and 16 minutes.
When you close it, does it automatically stop the recording?
I think well, maybe not. Maybe I have to join that back up.
Good job. I'm glad you caught that. No, it doesn't.